I haven't perfected my cinematic lighting technique, but we'll be making some improvements as we go. I know, right? Huge thanks to my super highly skilled buddy Josh for helping me improve the lighting in here and adjust the settings on my phone. Yep, I'm recording these on my phone. And thanks to the few of you guys who have told me how some YouTubers put affiliate links in the description so they can make a little side money if you buy the gear they use. But if I did that, it would mostly be outdated technology and broken stuff. But enough about the new sexy look of my channel. Let's talk about crazy Bible stories. There are more than a few parts of the Bible that contain elements of the supernatural, hard to believe, and mysterious. But some parts are downright soul-curdling. One such example is this cringe-o-rama from 2 Kings chapter 2. From there, Elisha went to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, some boys came out of the town and jeered at him. "Get out of here, Baldy," they said. "Get out of here, Baldy." He turned around, looked at them, and called down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys. Elisha went on to Mount Carmel and from there returned to Samaria. Well, if that doesn't feel like somebody just took a cheese grater to your tenders. This passage is regularly used by atheists to claim God is a moral monster, a heartless, petty, vengeful hellion who thinks child murder is a proper punishment for a bald joke. Sticks and stones, bro. Looks like Christians, and Jews, worship the divine equivalent of Ratigan from The Great Mouse Detective.
What did you call me?
Did God actually send the cocaine bear after some toddlers? Is the Bible saying a massacre is a reasonable response to name-calling?
Call me elf one more time. Call me elf.
You're an elf.
How can Christians or anyone justify this kind of behavior?
I told you. Don't call me Junior.
Okay, it is kind of cool when you're mowing down Nazis, but I'm pretty sure those kids weren't in the Hitler Youth. Well, hold on to your toupees, kids, because we're going to dig into this one a little deeper. Here we go. Context. It's important to know context when we're studying the Bible. When was this written? Where was it written? Who was it written to? And what were the customs of the people in the area at the time? It's important stuff to know. I mean, if you watch a movie about Al Capone without understanding Prohibition law, you might wonder, why are all these people getting shot over beer? Context is important. This passage takes place as the prophet Elisha is traveling to Bethel at a time when the Jewish kingdom was split into 2 groups, both fighting for control of the nation. We've seen that before. On one side are the people loyal to God, and on the other side is a pagan idol-worshipping sex cult. Elisha and his mentor Elijah, yeah, people confuse the two of them a lot, have been traveling through the region doing the Lord's work, blessing the good guys who follow God, warning the bad guy pagans to shape up, and seeing miracles that are nothing short of miraculous. Even right before this story, God used Elisha to miraculously purify the water for the people in the area. The name Bethel means house of God, or place of God, and this place got this name because it was originally dedicated as a place of worship for Yahweh, the God of Israel. There once was even a school for the prophets in Bethel, but like we've seen over and over again in the Old Testament, it didn't take long before things went bad. Later, it was even called Beth Haven, which means house of wickedness, because of the idol worship that became commonplace there. This place was an ancient 24/7 hedonism truck stop that made a Sam Smith concert look like Pooh Corner. Bethel started as a place to worship God, but had basically become a gigantic middle finger to everything God represented. And we have a large amount of archaeological finds from multiple archaeologists and universities supporting this. The exact ashlar altars, Asherah poles, and ritual pits described in the Bible have been found in this area, along with fortified walls, houses, and religious structures, and these date back to Elisha's time, and before, which is about 850 years BC. BC and BCE can be used interchangeably. Atheist scientists didn't like the designation before Christ, so they had it changed to before the Common Era, because it helps some people sleep a little better at night if they can ignore the impact that Jesus had on the entire world. So, we know the historical setting is accurate. On to the other details. Who were these kids? The Bible says 42 of them were mauled or torn by bears, not including any who escaped unharmed. But that's not a neighborhood kickball squad. That sounds more like a child gang.
Can you dig it?
Where are these kids' parents? To be fair, Numbers in the Bible sometimes represent something else. So, some scholars think 42 wasn't meant to be taken literally, though I couldn't find anyone with a convincing explanation of what that number might mean in this case. Also, the Old Testament sometimes uses poetic structure to make a point. If you read earlier in this chapter, you'll see what I mean with the repetition of Elijah and Elisha's conversations as they travel to different cities. So, some of this might be hyperbole. Regardless of the exact number, one of the major problems with this story comes from translation. The version of the Bible we used at the beginning of the video was the New International Version, and different translations use different methods to transfer the original text, which was in the language of Hebrew, into other languages, English in our case. The translation most used when citing this passage in the Bible, though, is the King James Version. Why? Because it makes this story sound the worst. Published in 1611, the KJV is one of the most well-known English translations out there. It's renowned for its poetic and majestic language, but since it was written over 400 years ago, it speaketh not in the tongue of thee and thou. So, it's kind of hard to understand. And sometimes there's just a better way to communicate what the Bible's original Hebrew, Greek, or Aramaic said, especially in modern English. For instance, in John 21:5, Jesus is standing on the shore, looking out at his disciples who are fishing in their boat. The King James quotes Jesus as saying, "Children, have ye any meat?" How Jesus-y. But if we want to translate Jesus' words so we actually understand what he meant, it would be closer to say, "Hey boys, have you caught anything?" The King James Version says these were little children, but the original Hebrew word used is na'ar, and the word na'ar has a broad range of meaning. It gets used for little baby Moses and fully grown adult Absalom. A na'ar can also designate a young adult male who is a servant, an armor bearer, a king's official, and, significantly for this story, a priest. The Hebrew adjective katan means small, little, or young. But the question we want answered, along with way too many celebrities and government leaders for different reasons, how young? This same Hebrew combination, na'ar katan, is used to describe a guy named Hadad in 1 Kings 11, who was old enough to own his own house and land. And likewise, when Solomon became king when he was about 20 years old, he described himself as na'ar katan, simply because he was inexperienced at being a king. So it can just mean an understudy, like a trainee priest. So, it's doubtful that the group mocking Elisha were little children or elementary school-age kids. It's much more probable that they were young men, and they were called Na'ar Katam because they were young pagan priests in training who were upset by Elisha and Elijah stomping their team in a few our God versus your God flexing contests, which always ended with the pagan priests losing, then being awarded a flash pass on the eternity ride. Okay, so they were probably grown young men. Does that justify God's cranky 2-year-old who missed his nap response?
You know what happens when someone upsets me.
Let's take a closer look at what these guys said. Most translations show this as go up, or you go up too. Immediately prior to this, Elijah, Elisha's mentor and best friend, had been called up to heaven by God. And whether you think that means he just died, or that he was literally taken to heaven in a flaming chariot, either way, Elisha just lost a loved one. These guys might be falsely accusing Elisha of also going up to the high places or altars nearby for worshiping their gods. Or they're taunting the grieving Elisha by saying, "We hope you die too," or at the very least, "We hope you vanish like Elijah so we can be rid of you." Or, this is a threat, and this gang of over 40 young priests is saying they're going to kill Elisha and send him to heaven along with Elijah. This is poor form. Elisha has been blessing people in this area. He fixed their brackish water problem, and yet they're insulting him. And not just him, but God too. Maybe Elisha had male pattern baldness, and they were just being punks. Or maybe being a prophet meant Elisha had one of those Friar Tuck skullets. But it's worth noting here how being bald means you have a bare head. Basically, they were pagan priests, mocking another priest and his dedication to God, and not just making fun of the guy's follicle shortcomings.
Hey, Baldy!
There is only one law. His law. Gandhi 2.
So now, let's look at the part of the Bible where it says God sent these bears. Where does it say God did anything in this story? It doesn't. This is important, because remember, critics of the faith are using this story to show how evil God is. But the Bible doesn't say God did anything in this story. It's also important to ask if a Bible passage is prescriptive, meaning it's an instruction on how we should live our lives, or descriptive, meaning it's a retelling of a specific event that we can learn things from, but we're not supposed to copy that behavior. Prescriptive? You should do this. Descriptive? Dude, check out this crazy thing that happened once. So, if God sent these bears, the Bible doesn't say it, and there's nothing to indicate that followers of God should handle situations in the same manner. It does say that Elisha cursed these guys in the name of the Lord. But what does that mean exactly? Popular belief is that it was equal to removing God's protection over them. Throughout the Old Testament, God showed a lot of patience with the people of Israel, and often protected them despite their idol-worshipping disobedience. In the book of Job, which was named after a guy named Job has almost all of God's protection removed from his life, which turns into the saddest country song never written. And it shows how Satan is more than happy to put as many people in the forever box as he can. But God prevents him from John Wicking the entire human race. It seems that, in this story, God honored Elisha's request to remove the protection over this gang of pagan priest trainees. And you really don't want that to happen when there are two very territorial mama bears waiting in the wings, just praying they get let off the chain.
What a mall!
I think the kids these days would say that these fellas effed around and found out. Don't look that up if you don't know what that means. Stay innocent. But basically, they picked an ideal way to go home with fewer facial features than they left with. Because when we examine the text, it doesn't actually say that any of these guys died, which makes sense because if there really were 42 or more of them, and only 2 bears, I'm sure it was mostly a lot of running and screaming and yelling, "Has anyone seen my thumbs?" But why would God even allow that? When we look at the whole Bible, context, we see that God is incredibly protective over his people. He calls them his children, and like most parents, including mama bears, he considers attacks against his kids as attacks against him. In fact, ask any loving father. If you attack one of his kids, you're going to get a far worse retribution than if you'd just gone after him directly.
I will find you, and I will kill you.
When prophets of the Old Testament were harmed or killed, God took it personally. And in the New Testament, when Saul was persecuting and killing Christians, Jesus didn't ask Saul why he was attacking those Christians. Jesus asked, "Why are you persecuting me?" Paul even agreed with Jesus. Wise move. In the book of 1 Timothy, when he said, "In the past, I spoke against Christ and persecuted him and did all kinds of things to hurt him." So, what should we take away from this? First, be nice. That wasn't really the moral of this Bible passage, but if you do disagree with someone else's religious beliefs, please be respectful. Maybe do the grown-up thing and buy them an overpriced beverage and have a conversation about it. Next, it's important that we actually study and examine the Bible, not just read a verse or two out of context and assign a meaning to it that's probably incorrect. Multiple Bible translations are available for free online, along with in-depth commentaries by scholars, historians, and theologians, and it's really helpful to see the Bible from all those angles so we can best understand the original intent of the writers. And when we find these odd parts of the Bible, we should just ask, what's the context? What is this meant to communicate? Am I really reading what's written, or am I assuming things, like God making these bears attack, that others have tried to convince me are part of the story, allowing them to influence my idea of what the Bible actually says? And especially if you're a Christian, I would strongly encourage you to read the Bible. I mean, how much sense does it make to say you're a Christian and that worldview is the most important thing in your life, which secures your eternal destination, and that worldview is founded on this collection of books, and yet you don't read it? Might not even really know what's in it. If you're just starting, I recommend focusing on the New Testament. Are there other super bonkers Bible passages you'd like us to examine? Let me know in the comments. Hit like and subscribe. Don't diss God's people. Watch out for bears. And remember, eternity is on the line, and that lasts forever. I hope you choose wisely and keep on thinking to infinity. you.